Okay, so then definitely my very interesting right now, but maybe affect about the way that like the sort of state number needed every time that you don't have got until that getting on in the component. Like until separating like maybe affect about getting the sort of the card like numbers like way back 83 like I'm doing maybe affect about that like that card might be that specific finger card that like in that against that voice record it has all that's all that thing that specific item or like a shard which is a yellow it allows like the players to exit from like the video writing game. So like I'm preferring that card. I'm preferring maybe being like the sort of that is that a remote possibility that I'm preferring right now. So that maybe I'm the super thing right now maybe a problem game that the card limit for like the sort of possibly being only three is definitely my preference. So that there will be only uh, three in number of that the sort of tasks that will be obtained from like the job to realize it. And pertaining to positive like the sort of card like number 83 card, which right now is going to be that exact uh, card which alone which might allow players to like exit from them to language. It's also like a possibility that I'm doing. So that I'm looking for like without realizing that gone into the as they would be that continuing on the journey with equity running game only to a certain extent self like after different that an exceptionally strong player from indeed from like the father and into that the running game of the that showing up to that these beginning areas of like the running game maybe in some of like with exact sort of that so needed to like that extreme short limit whichever depending on them whatever this thing. So like I'm doing either that or like I'm the Kilwa and one in like the villain stages itself of like the journey with the behavior and in the morning it is like exercise con uh player and I'm doing that them having and that player like okay checking like the cards on that gone and maybe because of that having shown up that society searching for like sort of star. So like that way him shortly finding out that Kindle has like its own sort of star. So that way like I'm doing him using his like exceptional superior skills like I'm doing usually defeating using his cards and using it to defeat Kindle and that stealing away like the sort of star and like escaping is like the scenario that him that way up feeling the star like him only straight away getting back towards like the deep path of ends of like the reality game is like one of the scenario better to the point once like continuing with the like won't be like at all I don't think at all to like eliminate the job but like to go through like that from trainer of that point and so to like player and to bring at that point only focused on the skill to the man and leave it like the scenario there. So like at that point like going to only himself to stand to like that mysterious like a strong player like not by not being a player not skill like feeling it was like sort of group card so that I'm putting it then like I'm bring that uh that slowly like one until of 30 have done have that substitution of like about different sort of group card seeing some special card and then we're gonna like eventually as they comes further into the daily running game so leave them or like I'm doing from that point on like them that decided like ask around about like the number 83 so trying to like find details about like the number 83 sort of card and at that point like in that the very next city that they will be which is like and then trying to like check around to the point of like the sort of and like then so me finding out only at that point that is that like how extremely rare like the sort of group number is breakdown was that like that was necessarily having only limit of three and that just being that card that like allows you that here to be able to like a clip from the video and that even just scenario that was about the also the Pulima Computer instruction right now is for like among like the current five current group members who are playing the daily running games like after you bring that one by one literally they will represent within like the daily running game after usually one by one that them losing a member with like there is a scenario that so like I'm also putting like into the possibility of that really I'm also putting maybe like the team of like Shal and Kotopi and the team of like Shal Kotopi and Shizuku like I'm eventually meeting up with like the team of like Peter and like it's like the finale that I'm doing. So like I'm doing by then like I'm doing like by the time they will be meeting up with each other like by sheer points of that I'm using by the time like they will be ending up running into each other like I think they would have lost already lost a single member. Uh, a single kind of member at that point. By that point, it's like the scenario that I'm in. Even after like they would be progressing through that together and playing the game together from that point on even at that point, I'm looking at the game getting happened and come to the point of that really one by one, like them losing members of that the panel of shooting like extreme difficulty and dangers of that and the extremely dangerous players as well of that. games like the little scenarios that I'm trying to like I'm different that eventually by the time eventually I'm different that the scenario being like I'm even more good the probability of that eventually that has like the final group members would be well the thing was like the father and because they like I'm feeling more good about the show like either none of like the current five final group members of like things Satan among like the current five current group members who are playing like the game of that thing Satan for copy and like Shizuku and like Shaq and like I mean what was about the game like all five of them eventually getting eliminated within like the video running game that way instantly that way like just by the act of playing like the video running game alone like eventually like five of like the final group members of like getting eliminated is like the more likely possibility that I'm going to like. The only other possibility that I'm looking for is for like only just one among like the five final members that are survive. Is like the only other possibility. Surviving and being able to like make it back out of like the career and is like the only other possibility that I'm looking for. And once that event happens, like then after like that single member being a badly and seriously injured shall alone. It's like the micro theory and question. So that according to my theory, I'm eventually like the scenario is the thing like like the current five and the fan members like that are playing like career and going to eventually ending up being like chat alone to manage to like eventually they have to escape out of like the career and get back to like, the real world. And at that point, I'm preferring like scenario to be like situation why Shan would be on like the verge of elimination, would be badly injured and would be on like the verge of elimination with like Shan. So it like among like the remaining four final group members like playing the game like Shan, losing one by one each of them and like just eventually any of the like Shan alone remain and like the situation being like included in the situation for Shan day to then like the career and again share within the share number and like the word is explanation and badly injured so like I'm going through some sort of like a strategy like shall barely managing to like make it back towards like that set point halfway point area. It's like according to my comprehension, so even with like things like voice recording having so gone by basically that one specific item which totally will be like a card like it don't like being like the only thing that can get like the players out of like to be like exist out of like the reality is actually like the real world. I'm looking for like more than the item like I'm doing. Also like to into my own impression that like be just a single item alone. That so like and that item I'm preferring would be having like the item limited it would be like okay a card and like this might be okay having like the card limit of exactly 3 is like my own so like even more than that way that can eventually like towards on reaching that the provision further towards like the different area of the second activity running at that point even more than like shall managing to like get one among those three limit card item and barely managing to that at the very last second as like shall be the like about the filling like where that using that item and shall managing to like the fit and exit back into like the real world and at that point I'm looking at even like the scenario that would be like such an extreme situation that like shall at that point would be totally giving up on this like current goals to like you should be most likely to like steal all the rare and valuable items from to loot all the rare and valuable items from like the real games from like the players or like even like rare items and valuable items within like the real games for him to like then exit and return back to like the real world. And then all that money would be it's like a kind of a path like the ways of like doing things of like something all this extremely rare and valuable items like so this well this is all in then like it might have enough need shell that might have been like the reason for like even drinking as well as like trade and like basically them having stored one of like the real and game profit from like bad and all that like might have been all due to that shell like totally manipulating them or like convincing them to like agree to like stand and like shell like idea to that play like putting it and game and see get all those valuable items. So that's the same thing with that of like Sudoku and sort of the other game like I'm different. This might be the non list but clear. So like I'm different that will sell like I'm different that on reaching like in different areas of the video running it and it's getting value either like more like the word of eliminate like at that point like that. So I think that shells mind will be for him to only just be able to like make it back into it that's the real one and the escape from that video running it like the scenarios that I'm control. Even if that scenario easily ends up being that Sal alone like managing to like survive and escape from the video running it, then I'm going at that point like whether I'm Shal will be making back to like the real world after that Shal not having any of that any of like the valuable items within like within like the video running game in this like person by the back to the running back to like the real world. There's like the scenarios that I'm looking for your and my guess will be very interesting. And I'm gaining more truth like about the day like that way. Finally managing to that make us escape not through that the one among the those are extremely aware and valuable item that in terms of like the limitation of that item possibly to free that and that still under the like shall that way like not taking back to lecture but to finally obtain that item but like uh, even more than that, I'm feeling more to about the fear of like that my already prediction that I'm going to think that like even just be like the rare item alone, that single rare item alone that might allow players to that to fit out of that video and again, but like I'm doing that halfway totally distance of that video and again would be at like halfway distance of the total distance of the video and again there will be that checkpoint area where like there will be like a station like tiny building where like players could like and literally exit out of that area and then by using that like a small station like setup that would be something like both like the halfway point as well as towards like the very end of the video and again both like players to so like that there will be that alternate way and when for like players to like exit out of the video and again to step into that probably that and that way and those are that the most of the bubble therefore like by the time like that will be managing to like escape from the period and if shall manage to like escape from the period and get literally like you can be the pen number and saying what to think about it like to most likely you think that halfway point it will be not when you through that shall by then like you would have crossed further ahead from even from the checkpoint area so like shall that by value just like starting his way to that making it back to that checkpoint area halfway checkpoint area before like the enemies that will be that enemy players that will be like chasing after shall moved out by then badly into a shall will be about to that thoroughly eliminate will be catching up the shall and will be about to thoroughly eliminate shall like, and that's very last second like shall managing to like make it to that station area in like that halfway checkpoint place and that from there like shall luckily managing to that escape from the video and get back to at the real world in that that's understanding the value of the without having any of like the rare on valuable items in the black possession while at the at the same time that shall alone running back and while losing all of his ladder purchases that remaining for Phantom or strong Phantom government ways to that period and go. This that's the other positive thing of black and scenario that I think about it and whether to do it. Also, definitely mentioned very interesting right now that for like share right now telling you to do that like simply positive that they will give the clear like clear and give using their kind of methods like that methods will be like the methods of like the final breakthrough like the main cross strategy that like often uses of like that absolute strength and disguise like to like basically their strategy of that like offering and eliminating that opponent or that absolute trickery of that stealth and disguise and also trying this will be what like shall it might be what like shall would right now telling you to go for like continue to play of the game using their method. It definitely might be the and I'm going to print that method that's quite the effective and improve. That is one shall the team of like shall for the edge to go would be from this point on would be thoroughly particularly using like I'm going to print that totally working out for them successfully for like a great extent of like their journey into that career and again, but like I'm looking eventually as they will further into that career and again, eventually I'm looking that their opponent that getting seriously stronger and stronger, and eventually I'm looking that the opponents that in like the path of ends beyond like the checkpoint halfway checkpoint area of the career and again will be so exceptionally strong and would be well experienced within that career and again then totally at that point would be let's see through that this guy's stealth recurring strategy of Black Shell and like the women kind of with like the scenario that I'm so like this like this type strategy which I'm considering will be what would be right now in Black Shell's mind. I'm considering that strategy will be most likely to that for Black Shell and for topic as well as like to go through that totally put on that absolute guys and to blend in among like the crowd like wherever they are in for them to like blend in with like the crowd and pretend and put on the fake act and pretend as if that they are NPC players. They are not active players. Like use that way to like totally blend in with like the crowd while simultaneously while even hiding like their net aura as well to like the maximum that way to like make them appear as if like they are like NPC characters and using that to get for them to like precisely wherever they go for them to like precisely while pretending to be NPC characters like using that to like carefully observe like around them to see if like there are any strong players and at that point that for them to that as that to keep up like the NPC can act and do that, making it going closer to those like strong players and basically that way like using that as a stealth like launch for the three of them to like launch that absolute ambush attack on like that player simultaneously at the same time that using the guys of that when use that might be like the idea of that shell right now and the strategy of shell that like strategy right now having into my definitely my yet like I'm looking like this amplification would be like a strategy that like I'm looking in like the areas beyond like the halfway checkpoint area of that particular and again beyond the halfway checkpoint like I'm still remember to remember that like the players will be both the experience and even way more trickier and like way more stronger. So like I'm feeling like this strategy I'm putting like of like taking it as like an NPC player would be about trying of like giving a strategy like players beyond like the checkpoint area possibly already having figured out and used would be using their definitely like in this way. Like this so like I'm doing beyond like the halfway checkpoint I'm looking like players beyond that would be so it's actually experience and strong that players will be only expecting such an ambush attack attempt from that players who would be that taking it as like maybe attempt like taking it as like a player that's really type of thing. So that way like this strategy those examples are most likely would be like the kind of strategy that like shall be having in mind like okay it would be into that fair in that in those like sort of areas within like the within that period and that given scenario that I'm being with other and my during also like that need my secondary instruction right now as well like the validation of that option that Dawn and Kilua right now have like the perfect thing that share money at that store so that it won't be getting stored. Like I'm looking for that even though definitely Kilua on finding that what NPC store on of like disturbing like even though right now that Kilua and without decided to like take like the money with them like a big like immediately like Liam was from that it's like uh that Liam was like even to the Kilua and one thing that like it was like a bad idea to like keep all the money with them because like I'm putting after like winning that recent like tournament of which is like a like Kilua might have managed to make a lot of money as well. I don't got a lot money as well. Might be the case definitely worth it. And right now I'm going like to do out keeping all that money with stuff along with that while they will be on the while they are right now playing the renegade with stuff with definitely worth it. And that brings the event resulting in that to do getting that like that money, all that money stored without creating it or like introduce that for the scenario that I'm looking at. And at that point I'm definitely cutting for like Silva and was strongly feeling as if we like listen to that words of that NPC chat I'd like to stop and from the to take those words of advice seriously and like them only from that point definitely planning on like playing according to the strategy of that whenever they make and get eventually get like are able to make a lot of money like at that point so like for them like really go up to a store and deposit all that money at the store and only take the money with them that would be only necessary for the immediate need alone would be along the lines of like final decision that like don't do at that point would be coming down to that one, like the scenario side of it. Yet, like I'm looking at eventually in the future, I'm going to bring that Swan and Kilua, even by using the strategy as well, would be getting money, use some of their money. So once again, it's like also like an example for the scenario side of it. Like, because like I'm doing like among like the trickery ways and that like the players like within like the career running game would be playing like the game. Like there will be also players who would be like who be setting using the strategy of that, pretending to be NPC players and pretending to that who would have only built that a totally fake store building and that which enact the exact appearance of like the original store building and basically that them that actual players like actually while like, hiding their manpower and basically would be like pretending those stores like pretending to be that NPC player and so that like that way to have that way that trick like other players who will be like showing up to like that store to like deposit all of their hard-earned money there into like that store and that way that the being such players using such three ways of like playing the career and game will be like that way stealing and tricking like other players and stealing away their money is like one possible scenario that I'm looking for. So like my tutorial was like exactly like how like the spell the type of spells are not just like the reduce to like just like attack based spell as well as like defense based spell alone. Like since there are also spells using with this like kind of like the steel spell using with this like that very first like player like the reader in game form like they will use. that steal spell and trace spell using which is like neither defensive spell nor attack spell. Using with it, using with which that player in the beginning of the reader game have basically managed to like go through that the card positions of that card inventory of like the Kilua as well as like was able to like put that trade on the like Kilua like I'm using such spells as well. And those there will be similar kind of spells using with which like even big building might be able to be created. It's also the Kilua so like that way like using such spells like I'm using like a fake building of like we have that exact semblance. This will be the only identical to that the original store building that when that player eventually like further ahead these two things that we in a game that they are being players who will be like using such spells that create like fake buildings, storm like buildings and that way like temporarily to be in pieces and that way like players who will be like that way tricking like other players and yeah stealing away with like all of the money of like those players of like for such a manner and then quickly undoing like their spell and like that way like the building straight away couple of times and like then progressing to other cities and basically checking up like using the victim with that as well then creating other identical storm buildings and that way like stealing more money and basically going around traveling across like the world of the real again making more make more and more like money through such trickery ways like there will be such players that I'm preferring that with my preferring and the claim was bringing to wanted to do getting some of that the hard and money to be able to getting stolen through such amount of help like by then calling through such a trap as well. It's also like an scenario that I'm preferring and my particular okay, so that question is very interesting right now. That's like the moment Kilua even says like the only card to resort is like sort of card and I'm disappointed on the all noticing that a bunch of players in your play like I'm considering definitely it will be definitely those players like those 3 or 4 players with that don't have notice nearby would be all extremely weak players except like the which to have not on skill or strong. But like I'm considering like they will be all present there. So they will be all present there. It is solely due to that the presence of lack of that the sort of growth chart in that will of position alone is definitely my preference. So like I'm still sticking to my preference that like the sort of growth most likely being that exact chart that would be that thing like that chart that would be allowed player to exit out of next career and again I'm still sticking to my preference that it would definitely be the sort of growth chart and still that also that like because already have like limited so like I'm doing like all these players uh like don't have right now notice that being near them like I'm saying there even though they will be so badly weak that I'm thinking that they might be totally badly weak players like still that they will be that much desperate feeling that get their hands on like the sort of that which like the scenario that is only for so Kilua I'm just like this the scenario usually being that of like the working of that Kilua possibly Kilua definitely since the political potential definitely putting like the sort of card being like an extremely rare and valuable card like about which like in like about Kilua and Gon might be totally unaware of so like I'm doing the casual way in which like Kilua is like of just casually mentioning like the name of like the sort of card in such an extremely casual manner like I'm just going eventually getting Gon and Kilua into serious trouble of like eventually getting that absolute precious sort of getting stolen from Kilua. It's that is the scenario that I'm looking at. Still thinking want to and basically I'm just saying that it will be after that like the sort of fruit card will be getting stolen that I'm looking like going to go building suspicion and we will start creating finding out searching for like information collecting to like the sort of fruit card and so you finding out that that e card that has the power to that and I would want to have to clear like exception to the library like doing the scenario that I'm sitting on the range. Okay, so like a police and the reaction right now in that she was often consenting that like they can prevent the card from getting stolen without any using spell cards like that. The thing that what Kiddo might be planning might be to that allow God and Kiddo's like powerful net or to that flow through their pits because like I'm Kiddo might have attempted that already by like allowing a tiny bit of the slack or like the recent then power that Tilua had gained of that and power of like electricity like Tilua might have the moment Tilua got this that sort of ground itself like I'm doing like Tilua might have made it not so far ahead to like the possibility of that from this point on time like perfect like the sort of and ensure that person gets so like to as like an attempt towards that achieving such opportunity like I'm going to I might have start off by unleashing out his like then aura then powers of electricity that with that starting with that very tiny bit of its intensity enveloping that hook of that kilo in this like sort of a card like that. So that the kilo might have let out like a tiny extent of that electricity to that non kinetic power of kilo to that flow through that the kilo thing as well as like the sort of or enveloping sort of card might have been what the kilo might have done and kilo might have gradually and at that point kilo might have gradually reflect the intensity of like the flow of kilos and powers of those that and that card might have been what might have happened first to like ensure that like the book as well as card doesn't get destroyed. If you unleash this Latman balls onto the field and the card sort of with that fight intensity. So like gradually to might have increase like the intensity of like those men balls going onto that and like the card and might have realized that basically that the card as well as like so the same to that withstand like the total full strength of that it was that terminal power to along the line that you are of the so like I'm saying like might be that it was like strategy and plan to like protect that the book as well as like the guard from getting stolen. Uh, so those plan might be to that right now tell one as well to that unleash out after like don't be getting attacked for like one as well to that unleash out with that full and then powers related flow into and ended up being like the entire thing like the book so that like even if like someone uses like a spell card uh, to like steal like the cards from that and like either into a whether like either from that into a auction like regardless of that like the moment he is stealing they are attempting to like that to steal that card like they have to like deal with that actual powerful and then or of their like enveloping that card so like I'm thinking that so that way that what we do with everything we do that if it's like weak players that attempt to like steal their cards that at that point that the moment they will be making making contact with like the card or like the moment that their card will be getting stolen and that getting placed onto the book of that player itself like I'm doing that player would be having that deal with like the powerful member of that zone and as well as like the UI and that would be able to like be able to like deal with it and will be having to like survive that man or it should be we should be and significant task for like the two players would be along the lines that to the would be order might be already saying especially one person do that again that could also think that even if it's like a strong player that they using like to steal attempt to like steal their card even so even if it's like strong player, still even that strong player would be having to like deal with like the net aura. So like even if it's the strong player is able to like handle like the net aura of that figure and so on enveloping their cards like still at that point like that net seven like info of like that net aura happening through the card their cards once your cards is getting stolen to be due to that being so the unexpected like I'm just like so that whole moment where like that person will be that attempting to like steal like the and give up in the having that unexpected situation of that the sudden burst of that net power that then or and then both coming out of that and at that point like I'm to take advantage of that starter situation of that even such a strong player tries to like steal from them that sort of only thinking that player to be that in like a starting situation like the moment you will be like stealing the card and that's the then also the condition out of like the card. So like at that point to like totally take advantage of that starting situation and for like to do with only things that like at that point they'll be able to take advantage of it to like instantly launch an ambush attack by that player will be having such like guard down due to like the unexpected unleashing of like and passing and powers from like the card will be along the lines like you're sitting so that like that way to the advantage of that guard down situation of that player to that attacking and bring it down regardless of that player like regardless of that player like we along the lines maybe I mean like to do with only thing and this might be the reason for like being that way they have like the ultimate protection to prevent that card from moving. So it's definitely my direction. So I'm probably I think we only to do that or conference like definitely regardless of what of strategy that Kindle will be having in his mind and things everything that like that would only prevent from like the card getting stolen like I'm still for like that strategy Kindle only working out against like the weak player alone and I'm still in my book that like the strategy of Kilua which that Kilua right now has in mind like I'm doing like not actually seeing that in action like the moment like I'm doing that currently not only like as like this current weak players like following like Gon and Killua like that with their attempt to like steal their chance like at that point when they will be using speed spell they'll be using like spell like steal their plans like at that point so I'm like the first time Gon will be witnessing that Agil's strategy in action. And like I'm looking like also that initial player who had put that race spell on Killua like I'm looking that due to that race spell I'm looking at still right now it can only instantly might have gotten updated like the moment Killua had won that tournament and had gotten that sort of truth card like at that point felt like that person might have totally got instantly updated or like kind of like gotten section and that kind of thing as to like Killua having got that sort of the card that might do this that might do the damage due to that race spell. So I'm looking at the tournament they left on like I'm looking like that very same player like from Sky once again showing up to where Silva and John would be entering totally once again. And I'm looking maybe for this at that point like I'm looking like being a scenario where like not being in by himself but like thinking along with him I'm looking maybe like two other players in his like team that in his group that they be showing up along with him to with the soul intent to like still figure out that sort of start. And I mean, even at that point as well, like just being was start as well, only failing due to that it was lack strategy. Was definitely might be very to prevent like the start fight with the for the scenario that I'm doing. And that resulting in like one and kill one getting not only that absolute boost of confidence and like false feeling of like safety and like all confidence along the lines of like their chances of totally safe and won't be getting strong at all. No matter even it's like strong players that eventually shows up to that and able to feel that that should be along the lines of that same hot safe and all confident one or confident feeling that no one will that one will be having. Which particular like eventually for the black direct the black with that definitely eventually one particular strong player like would be that stealing away that silver black uh, sort of card. Like, and I'm thinking of like with that happening by the time that Donna can work with making it to their very next destination, whether it's like another city or like another forest like city or like an area. I think that would be the very next destination that like actual destination that like Donna and Kidwa would be making. I'm thinking that from there is when I'm looking for that like we can all be making that sort of book that getting stolen is like the scenario that I'm looking for the pregnant with so like the cinema is very impressive right now. Well, like you know, even knowing that like basically the card like it doesn't necessarily have to be put into like a cement pocket itself. Like and the different the fact that you even know that this might have been solely not told that you are lack of testing it out and basically just like placing just casually just placing this like code card onto that the free for the story. Like might have been not seen what might have happened. Like definitely the next thing that Silva have already has experience in that playing case like definitely Silva might be taking that whole world of like the three kind of game and it's like dangerous and everything seriously. It's a feeling understand. So like what Kilo might have done that might have been right might have been like the scenario in which like might have been after like Kilo had won that tournament and had brought us like that sort of start like at that point maybe the Kilo at that point might have realized that we may consider like the possibility of that definitely this was like since it was a card that was awarded to like the victory of the tournament definitely existing like at least to an extent of that elements to that card and people who would want that card. So Silva after winning that tournament, like they might have totally also gone Silva might have totally got like prize money as well. Prize money as well. It's certainly not so like that they go and Silva while they might have they might have got like a model and then while they might one might have gone Silva was like a thing and while one was working at that point Silva might have left the model and Silva might have with that consequent to like ensure like the protection of that the sort of those star that Silva might have started thinking and that thing of that one of definitely hearing to have like a strategy to like prevent the star from getting so stolen. So like Silva what Silva might have done might have been like Silva might himself might have walked around that city and might have asked one of the like all sorts of shops and might have talked to like all sorts of NPCs characters might have been what might have had connecting to like all the things like this Silva might have had in mind and one of like the strategy that Silva might have created down so might have been to totally objective of thinking of that changing that the zone group chart from like the designated pocket and putting it onto that previous pocket if that's possible then Silva's plan might have been to that way in like efforts to that of the prevent like stealing getting a start from like plan might be to that so we create like a bunch of that cut out and create like a bunch of cards and make it that design it to make it look identical to the original sort of truth card, and that way to like create like a bunch of fake cards, and that way to all over like the free pockets along with like the original sort of truth card, and that way so that like once like someone tries once someone will be trying to like steal like the card from Kindle, at that point, then first of all, like then getting tricked with like the sort of those charts they were expecting in like the resonator pocket not being there percentage like the resonator pocket, and then like if like there are multiple of them like and they, or like if they have multiple cards to like steal for like to steal like cards from like another person like, and if they use that card again like then the next time it like should be even at that point to like totally have them getting that biggest stock with that the three pocket being full with that being full with that each and everything to start looking exactly like the same sort of good start that due to that good strategy that Silva might have used. So this might have been like Silva's strategy. It's certainly my position. So like right now, I'm going different definitely. So like this information, like I'm looking here, it might definitely it has not at all been a scenario where like Silva might have straight away tried this out and tested this out himself, but like it might have been simply through Silva like privately like talking going around like that previously and like talking to a bunch of NPCs asking them about like doing such a thing is not possible for them to do. And like if that resonates stuff could like be kept to onto like the free pockets and if like fake cards could be created and placed onto like the fake pocket like just like Silva might have walked around that city and might have entered in all sorts of stores and might have been asked to like a lot of NPCs and like there might have been multiple NPCs that might have not responded to that question of Silva, but like I'm saying eventually that part of Silva might have eventually ended up bringing about results with like maybe one of the NPCs alone might have had like the answer might have been programmed to have like the answer to such a question. And that way, like they might have been like the individuals that might have revealed and or gave the answer to Kilwa and told Kilwa that basically it is possible that basically Kilwa can't do it without any consequence. Maybe along the line they might have revealed that Kilwa, and that way like I'm different that Kilwa might have formed such that strategy. Yet like I'm different that this would be like something that like and so definitely my different is that like this might totally be Kilwa like character strategy my different. Yet like even right now Kilwa we don't think that basically the strategy of like the strategy as like only a temporary strategy to like totally keep the cards of like both Ron and Silva, and they will be getting that initial around the initial progress of like their journey within like the great game, as they will be only initially getting that only few cards, like collecting, obtaining that only few cards only at that point for them to be able to like in one to price to like steal the cards with like playing, creating and playing a bunch of play cards along with like the real cards to hide the real cards and basically so like the only thing that like only a temporary solution because like the only thing that once that wanna do are we literally getting more and more cards that basically this like trade card strategy won't be applicable. At that point will be one thing that you are only will be cut off. So like the little bit of the planning to like only use this like fake card strategy as like the a temporary current strategy to prevent like their cards from getting stolen. But like you also whenever they are there and so we also actually thinking about like about being a platform that do way more brilliant strategies for like the eventual point where like they will be uh, they're saying that they create number of left cards. So at that point, like for them to prevent like left cards from getting stolen even at that point. But like at that point, they're not really able to like rely on like fake card strategy. So like at that point as well, what strategy they will be and they would have to like come up with not to like prevent their cards, all those great number of cards that they will be having at that point from getting stolen. Like you know, we have to even thinking about like a font such as strategy as well, even in like the person as well while casually talking to one might be the case that you need my preparing. So this might be also the reason for like one only seeing only right now that that ball is gone even finding out about like your strategies and all that might be the case certainly and might be what might have happened in the past. Definitely my experience. So like the even the framework right now with like the like player with like the name of okay that I think that is really the thing like losing is like pressure thing will start to like steal an opponent start like I'm looking right now with like there being another player along with him like I'm looking like that player with like I'm just playing right now with like not okay attempt to like steal kilo start and it become a failure like I'm looking right now that the other player I'm looking right now so they were feeling that like that chart would be in like complete pocket of kilo and like right now I'm going to like straight away or it might well certainly having that skill well so like that felt like skill like on and using that like yet like I'm something like in the free focus like I'm using in my book ambition that like the surprise that is we line away for him would be like once you be checking that the free pocket like and to get a data that skill that sort of from that to skill. from like the free pocket of Kilo. At that point, getting like the just of like the entire piece of like the free pocket filled with like sort of fake cards is like the scenario that I'm due to that Kilo fake cards writing like the scenario that I was going and I was doing right. So it's like a legal generation right now. That's what right now right now you're telling how like the currency has been born doesn't necessarily have to be kept in like the mind of still the police can say I'm out to reveal that basically even if that on winning on us getting a card like that card having to be placed within like the mind within that 10 limit kind of like a thing. I think it's like a like kind of like a limit to publish a card that has to be placed within like the mind. So like the case might be that once like a card is even taken out of like the mind as well, there will be still requiring that 10-minute limit before which that card will definitely be having to kept to be kept back into like that website by but we might be the case definitely might be very support. Definitely I'm going to bring that Kindwa would be that it end up bring as well saying instead of Kindwa might definitely talk about that as well. The view that it so that right now that having removed that this laptop that might have been solely due to that extreme confidence of that Tilua as for like from Tula's point of view, Tilua might be probably might have had that absolute confidence as for like these leaders who are like stopping Tilua and so basically push Tilua's so for start like you be like launch the picture definitely will be like making the move and like launch the I can see that still that card from Tilua within exactly 10 minutes believe that absolute confidence that Lakilwa might have had, and the strong feeling that Lakilwa might have had. And this might be the reason for Lakilwa totally right at that unlike the moment Kilua might have noticed that these individuals like basically stopping Kilua. That one said Kilua with that this stealth with hand movements like might have quickly remove like the card all the cards with like by rank and might have quickly placed it into the slack pocket without all these individuals like stopping Kilua not being able to like find out about that. Might have been what kind of happened. Definitely, so like I'm looking right now, not like all the cards of Kindle which are right now. I felt like focus of this like shorts might be that today certainly maybe it's an ending. So like Kindle will also absolutely is on trying to that like basically of not just like then attempting to like steal the stock of like attempting to like steal the loss start happening within that 10-minute limit as well as like Kindle even being able to like take them out as well. Even that as well certainly being powerful within like that 10 minutes and like even after taking them out for free was to straight away even place that all the like back to this like find out as well that as well being powerful within that exact 10 minutes 10-minute limit would be that confidence that Silva would be having. That's definitely this might be the case definitely might be the reason might be the reason for like Silva start not being present in both like the female puppets as well as like the free puppet right now. It's definitely organized obviously like it's really not very interesting right now with like the two players like fading and stealing like so the card and like the third player like being have been developed and still like the free of it. So that game I was very ambitious that like that sort of card being like a free of set of zone would be totally a fake card and no like that will sort of card. Definitely not very ambitious. So like the super like might have been like a card like an identical feeling like sort of card fake card that like one and below might have together cut out and placed down to like bind up, especially might have been very much. So like what might have happened only like actually the platform right now has revealed to that basically how a rock being turned into a card that making just information as well that for like the abandon of the tree and rock being able to be turned into cards like that as well would be that knowledge that like both Don and Killua might have gained after like Killua has seen like the sort of risk card, token sort of risk card after winning that tournament like after that like after the next straight away Don as well as Killua might have straight away start a thing ahead that might have been able to like actually think ahead and of like the possibility of like the sort of people coming after us to like stage that the sort of will like straight away with after like winning that tournament what to do and Don might have done like they might have got to like ask questions to like all the great number of NPCs across a that store within that the previous business that you may be range that's what might have happened. So like they might have wanted to like ensure that they would be able to like perfect like that as sort of card. That league might be very much because like they might not have seen the capability of like so we card being like an exceptionally valuable card as well. That league might be very both that league all those might have been interacting with like multiple entities with like one and might have figured out about like these five might have been able to gain such knowledge as for like even random objects being able to like easily be able to like turn into cards to trick any player who might try to like steal the shots and all that. Like, and maybe a store like information about like cards, like fake cards, so being able to shut out and like basically create a look identical and if placed on like the designated pocket or like the fake pocket like the finger sticking along with it, like maybe such an information as well. Like one and killer might have gained by asking around to multiple NPCs in like the previous they might have finally gained that like one might have been what might have happened is definitely my difference. But that way like I'm looking right now, it will be that that's pricey that which like one and killer might have already figured even way back that and might have even applied way back then that might have been after like one and killer might have applied all those prices and all that like in different land they might have had their full Killua might have had just casually in front of those three players too or were like stocking might have been even at that point might have been already stocking Thorn and Killua without even knowing which all cards they possibly had. They might have already stocked Thorn and Killua. It's definitely my good reference. So at that point, like Killua even casually saying, talking about like having like sort of about his like sort of like a casual man might have been definitely Killua consciously doing that might have been what might have happened. So like even back then like Gon and Killua might have been all set and prepared to the all of their strategies and everything already even back then. Definitely my preference. So like that about just turned into a card and which was found at like Gon's like pre-coded everything that might have been already present at that point back then. That's definitely my preference. So definitely my personal impression is that like even with like that third player like pretty and totally believe that like sort of as like him has identified like the sort of card as like being present in that terms free pocket that definitely will be a fake sort of card like the actual sort of card like this and that time might have been in like Killua's pocket which like Killua using his like speedy hand movements might have quickly took out of his like binder and like might have placed it into his left pocket the moment Killua might have sensed like these three players like talking like one and Killua might have been what might happen. So like right now I'm looking at their player attempt to like steal that this is attempt to like steal like the sort of start from one story but like I'm looking right now getting shocked like initially thinking that he finally has got like the positive card, then him realizing that it's like a fake card. And then at that point, like Amazon like him totally being like totally going crazy and like confused and like getting frustrated at that point. And I was like the two other players and then because like at that point Killua was like a smile like totally going down taking out like the original sort of card from Killua's pocket. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for. And at that point like those three players being absolutely talk. And at that point I'm made Killua with that just like then attack like I'm that not severely injuring them, but like injuring them to like the point of that they would be unable to like move instantly at that point. It's like the scenario. So Killua doing that and that Killua straight away before like the 10 minute time limit, 10 minutes I think that's the time limit. So like before that 10 minute time limit would be or like even before that Killua straight away I think that was the sort of card like that was like rocket from this like rocket of the sword so back to that, like the winter scenario that I'm looking at. Okay, so that the blue is interesting right now. So that going into that automatic like the 3 players and actually protecting the soil pro card and they will be just strongly feeding that like in pro that strategy one but like I'm doing that we right now that like as Killua says the dialogue itself like I'm the land so by sheer points of it like I'm the land right now it's like an accent as Killua even has right now talked about like the strategy not working against like pro players. Right now it's a competition pro player right now it's like the sheer point of like showing up right in front of like one and all and like other like straight away stealing away like the ball start and straight away leaving just like that like the finale that I'm doing and like I'm jumping and looking nothing to actually do at that point especially just like the sort of pro start down to like right now like there being absolutely nothing to do would be able to do at that point to like to like that uh stop that like so from being installed at that point it's like the scenario that I'm taking and then sitting on one and also specifically my representation that like about the representation that when on the government created electronic it was often finding out that the code to start as for like being like the card that allows that absolute rare card that allows us like exit from that particular against the real world. It's like my reference and then sitting on. So even that like at that point I can put the law looking at in the frustrated and we just try to like find that instead uh so for player. he has taken and stolen away like the it's not Kilo and like and Kilo the answer is right like at that point I'm like Kilo the has a goal. Like, until that point Kilo will play it was like playing like career and solely to like help Stone out to have gone here like meet him like that there is in Kilo like from that point on the base only focus will be like only would be mainly only focused on out of it that will be only focused on that that southern goal that's what they have for Kilo getting created for like that works focus solely being on from that point on being on that instead of that or for that realizing game player who had stolen like that ultimate so from Silva to find him and to defeat him and to like get his next soul of start back that such an ultimate goal to create within that Silva. Right now, it's like without there is like the scenario that I'm looking and sitting on top. So like I'm looking get like Silva would be like putting in all that hard work and just really would be that sufficient to be like fine that asking about like that if anyone knows that anyone has heard of know that player like even though Kilo would be known his name that Kilo would be talked about asking like other players about like by telling about like this like description as to like what to and they could bring like by to go to like mentioning like the description of like, this player as like what he look like to like other players and asking them if they know that really at that point I would bring like the other player like other player like having that absolute shock of fear into like the face because like I'm believing that other player would be shocked who will be instantly recognizing and realizing like the player that you are like, talking about because like that player will be most likely a huge big shot player within like the career ranking game, extremely popular and extremely powerful player within like the career ranking game. Like the my consider and that like the different areas that so like Silva and Gone will be shocked at like appreciate like person of like that other player to whom to dog be that mentioning the description will be shocked on hearing it that like such an exceptionally strong player from like the farther peak end of that particular game, even further to that short that all the way to that such early areas of that particular game that that atmosphere in that face of that player to whom people will be asking about his player. So like at that point I'm looking that player would be like shocked and like that player would be telling at that point would be revealing the name of that for player to that bonus video. And you'll be telling about the details about him as to like how extremely powerful and strong and dangerous that like player even is and usually along the lines of like Silva was like absolutely lucky that like that powerful strong player that didn't eliminate Silva had only stolen like the Silva without eliminating Silva which Jerome Canine comes in that other player at that point like trying to comfort Silva at that point to catch this now that I'm doing. So like at that point like instead of fear like from Silva it would be like an absolute waste that and frustration that Kilo was feeling at that point, and that absolute goal being created with Kilo, I feel like at all costs to like definitely ensure that Kilo will at that point that keeping in the mind that like even if Lone finds usually finds things like until Kilo finds and fight the entity and gets back just like sort of broke car like even if there's like even if they find like any other way to like leave it's just some like career running games back to like the real world. Still Kilo actually won't be that lead at all without getting that sort of sports car after like defeating that popular big shot player real life game player like along the lines of like what stand and gesture that Kilo would be making and telling on that or if that was now that who is like going to be not be happy with the game like that's not and the even though from that point on, I'm putting back to that straight is up for that player and trying to find that player like something like it game only towards like the very end of like the progress of Lona Killua within like the real game that like finding Killua would be even be able to like find that like big shot powerful and strong player and would be having that alternate 5-0 thing and to keep me and like that way to do that and that only fighting would be a 1 versus 1 fight and like to don't get only fighting with no respect that as well as to the opponent of like trying things with that personality that I'm living right and I'm looking like finally to do all that was struggling to stay into that really feeling that big shot player and like finally that way to do getting back the Delgado's net personality that I'm just over about it. The sort of that natural scenario that I'm yet like I'm doing all that happening before going with the that finding the like the scenario that so that even after getting that car like I'm looking like Silva so telling gone that basically that get up in the plans on like keep playing like the like on until until at least this goal of like meeting game and like if Yeah, and Bonnet maybe at that point telling Kilua that Kilua wants to exit out of the period and game that Kilua can, because like by then they would have gone to extreme range of the situation and might have taken all sorts of like extreme injuries and everything. So definitely not like Bonnet at that point didn't Kilua that option of like basically if Kilua so that Kilua would have given his goal by then like Kilua can exit and fail the time turn back to like the real world. We would have like maybe wanting Kilua at that point. But like I'm looking at that friendship at that point, like being clearly visible, but that we don't straight away like straight away instantly something that offer up on and like straight away telling one that it's not going to even think at all about like leaving without like entering that one that you just goal of that meeting game. There's like scenario that I'm looking that way then studying on the journey. We can do like even more deep into like the scenario, in the scenario that I'm looking right now. Okay, so like definitely my very interesting right now as for like Kidwa only shooting up Mexico with to like the skill of set pro players like I'm definitely so they once like Kidwa and God will be reaching that next destination of like the magic city of Macedonia. Like at that point is when I was like most likely I was going for one and Kidwa to like get that absolute shocking twist of that realization that like and that to be like scenario that like that sort of start with that single array of cards that had also play out that we have like expected on the clear and they also like what scenario when the scenario that I'm straight. So that way like I'm thinking straight away like on having that realization I'm thinking like what only simply regret like action or like giving up like the sort of start or make it up at like bonus one. So definitely at that point, like I'm from that born and kid only thinking of that like brainstorming and like thinking of like bunch of strategies and like then okay feeling that that definitely that much crucial that they get like the sort of start that definitely from those sort of like the scenario that I'm going. So like I'm doing them only basically even training to that maybe for like 2 days like I'm doing that maybe for like a whole day like maybe them while simultaneously brainstorming and creating that all sorts of that strategical plans like then also that train and like learning as much as they can from and obtaining all sorts of that unique spell cards from like the magicity like Matadora that way like them putting in all that hard work and trying to like prepare themselves to like have that influential ultimate fight against those group of pro players uh, and through that attempt to like get back so cards. So like I'm thinking by the time that way by the time like Bona you are going to just link people getting ready and like you are turning back to that and sort of back to that area where like they have found that book and I'm looking that at that point I'm looking that Bona Kidwa totally finding that one of like those pro players that totally badly injured and dying on the floor around that area. Like I'm looking like that area where they had seen that initially seeing that pro player group of pro players like I'm looking at them turn back there and then have like got around a lot in that area. They walk back there. And at that point I'm looking maybe like Kilua telling on that we maybe find out that they might have that pro players might have being left back to the like career world will be long time that I think what would it only looking for at that point. So like I'm looking at that point, like I'm looking as like they will be planning on like totally giving up hopes on like getting that for card and that definitely I'm still in my consideration that like the sort of card might totally be having the limit of sorry. So like I'm looking like to want get them totally thinking of like simply of like direct themselves so that like they can like eventually accept everything to like the great running game, which will be at least able to like find another one of like the remaining two. So this will be along the lines of the next one and the only thing, but like that definitely was the movie when I would be up on that like that task would be such a secret hard task so like I'm going to being extremely disappointed and from that point on, they would be like about to return back to like the Western city of Barcelona, right? As they would be like decide taking that decision to like go that like everything at that point. But they would be like about to make their way back, like them softly running into then softly finding one among like those member of like the role players like badly injured and like lying on the floor, like on the ground, like the scenario that happened. So like at that point I was in that group that person like that pro player like I'm gone and getting that shocking realization that like this single especially powerful big shot pro player from the defense of like the career dining game that hasn't shown up there and wiped out like the remaining of like the entire the remaining of like the group of like the core players and that maybe this one player might have probably somehow managed to like get his skill might have been what might have happened along the lines of that pro player at that point, like who is the bad danger that revealing to that gone and into a shop gone and it was like the scenario that happened. So like I'm feeling like a writer like gone and to clear punch like help that pro player recover so like they can get more information as for like whom this like big shot was like who would have only eliminated like the majority who almost like the entire group of pro players while only this single pro player I don't might have been able to like get and might have just to like solely feel like we're going to start might have been what might be happening by then it's like another so like I'm thinking at that point like that major pro player like I'm thinking like that person like revealing the name of that big shot to that one I could one and like as like on like really able to like treat and save that pro player like I'm putting that pro player succumbing to like extreme injuries and like getting the native like scenario that so then just that name alone that way when that so like that way there's not even knowing like the description of that the appearance of that big shot player just like name alone would be what like when I could already knowing at that point of that scenario that I'm visible and that like I'm looking at that point like when I could even being so that like the extreme levels of like difficulty and the strength gaps like existing within like the mirroring game. Like the my particular understand that the task that lies up ahead for them if they even want to like initiate it the particular game that task like get the sort of card even being like such a major task like that extreme intensity of that difficulty like I'm like slowly sinking into like wanting to do at that point is also like a um scenario that I go to the also, luckily, my Brazilian person right now for like me like that next person is not born at Kilua, like the city of Matador, like in India, like gone and Kilua, like injury, like running into like the newbie players, like those remaining newbie players who had decided to like stay with that group, like the previous city, like after the like in like the next city of like Matador, they're like I'm born and Kilua, probably fighting that those newbie player, one among those newbie player in like can eliminate that kind of situations like personality that I'm looking. So like fighters so like I'm looking that fighters that one among like those newbie player would be getting eliminated to be when like I'm for like to happening like run into that location like the scenario and would be shocked at seeing that and that newbie player in an eliminated state is like the scenario that I'm like that group and talking about probably in measure like that these lab along with like all the other remaining movable labs so like I can specify when like I'm talking that zero and talking about also left that area but like also necessary and also after the bringing like the medical field not at all for like gone and to that need that exact plan who had basically put that who had showed up in front of Ron and Silva in at the beginning and with that and had placed like that trade spell on Silva like I'm playing that player like I'm looking like Ron and Silva okay running into the into the index while they were just for index and I think of Motorola. It's also like the scenario that about the only like so that's so that the name of the ambition right now not for like the new picture finding like move and right now after this that Ron and Silva with like choice of like especially for thing like she would definitely be having certain intentions that we might be able to definitely consider. And this will definitely be to definitely steal that all the cards that then go actually up to steal that attain that by trying them and second that usually that might be definitely be the case that we remember. Because like I'm doing the entire time, it's like while Gon and Kidwa, while Gon had left taken the decision to like not join that group of like that previous city due to that Gon realized that it's like a trap like once like Gon left that basically she might have okay got intrigued alone definitely might have been by that whole projection of Gon and might have been able to like might have got a feeling and might have been able to extend that way to do something that's off with like this whole group the moment that Gon had been released rejection to be part of the group. And that might be the reason for like that curiosity might have been what like caused us to like follow got into the might have been the games supplement might have been the yeah like it might have been the click on that might have usually interested stuff and might have created that curiosity supplement because from that point on like she might have been the entire time even to like the she might have been that stock gone and below everything gone and below was good and like that's like how like a brilliant man of like gone and below had to really those three league players who try to like steal like some down from like Gona Silva and all that like I mean, like even Gona Silva like uh, Gona Silva like them playing like sort of in like that tournament, you are winning the tournament, getting like the sort of like one of the like she might have simply might have been stalking within that and observing within that and definitely might fail. The journey one until you are so far within that particular again from that point on. And that she might have been like just talking and observing the Indian answering. So even like gone until you are losing that like sort of start to that group of like pro players as well. She might have seen that as well. It's definitely my good impression. So that might have been after all of that, like she might have right now at this point might have decided that like it will be like the best point for her to like make that move. Uh, might be along the line she might have felt sort of like even one like one had once Nikhil had brought back the whole star language that point she might have only figured that like that point like definitely that they have finally got wanted that clear cards so like and she might have felt hesitant to like make the move and put all the on big act to that this definitely would be like a big act might be the new able to have be able to like join the team of Monica because like she might have only felt that like don't like them processing like with them processing like the phone for the card like they will be like they will be feeling in that protected manner of that and that will be that much more likely to be just that has a stranger like straight away join like the team but like I'm through once we third and once you had seen that that only sort of to start like that tournament Killua and like really getting stolen from like the top players like at that point she might have noticed like that so like right now since like Tempo doesn't have any well, designated not even a single designated star at all like really so that just might be that just like gone into the back to like to our one kind of like a situation like she might have felt that this could be like the best possible chance for her to like join like the team of Ronan Kidab. Simply because like so far by observing Ronan Kidab like something that girl might not only feel that the exit might be strongly feeling that like that has the potential within like the team of that Ronan Kidab or the hero of Ronan Kidab to that maybe able to like collect a lot of starts that the journey processes. Along the lines like she might have felt that even though currently Ronan Kidab are not top players that still like they are exceptionally powerful manpower as well as like technically they are brilliant ways of like strategy and thinking that possibly will be eventually getting them far within like the career and get into that even of that of training a lot starts with in the possibility along the lines onto different lag and that there might have felt like strategy might have been to like have them for like trying to do up mainly put in all that hard work for training all of the rare and valuable tasks as like the journey of this so that like eventually some plan would be to like eventually and at that point click up take activity for as well like she's totally part of the team. So that next for eventually at like a distant point to like in your running game when she will arrive at like the point to like make her move for her at that point to like once like gone and give up by then would have according to what she will be hoping would have created would have collected and obtained like uh, a certain extent of that enough of number of like rare cards like at that point for her to like simply make that up to betray and lag and that way like steal and get away with like all that rare and valuable stuff that like Sonic could have obtained under that point would be her plan especially my career and also my career is for like that girl would be also feeling that area that she could probably use like Dawn and Silva as like for her protection and her survival within like strict services within the career running game would be also along the line like she might have went so like she might have been like maybe thinking that like until like to facing this film of like Dawn and Silva and all the way to like the point of the gem comes in hopefully collecting a lot of like rare and valuable stuff to get the point of like while Gone and Kiddo will be satisfyingly would be also hopefully would be getting their hands on that specific card that should be allowing players to like that which is single card that like allows them to like exit out of the career and again like at that point to like finally make the career delay for something like make some stealthy betrayals that we Gone and Kiddo to like steal all of their cards with that actually self after like earning their trust and basically earning the strongly earning the from by that and they tend to like steal out all their starting moving make the start to like exit out of the career again. And that way for us to like at that point we could exit out of the career again, return back to the real world and that for our like I'm definitely still thinking about the rendition that we won't be playing the career again at all to that player and complete that career again. Or to be like the first person to like complete that career again for such a pain won't be at all like the reason for us even playing the career again. Our only thing that might be definitely due to that we can bring the data and give my feed just to like cut all these rare and valuable items so that I can let the real world sequel like okay sell it for like give some of money and using that money like something that she would like totally might totally want to like save her sick mother or like father and being more the possibility of like she possibly might be a mother that is totally unwell and sick and might be like not having much time left for that treatment to that for like some sort of treatment to definitely so that this should require like a full sum of money like definitely know it and the and in that word as well as some mother to be in the extremely poor as well as the human training for like for continue for their survival and for her to like save to really save her mother as well would be like a might be the case for like something in play like the real and definitely might be the so might be the case in the definitely another brand. So like definitely right now that's what you're right now the fiction on that app with they actually like totally to get to come with like on it to like for to like to make them let allow her to like join their team would be what like she will be probably having such intention to like eventually make like on it was that my own brand within that speaking about it. So like right now it's like straight away with like it was saying that absolutely no. Definitely I'm looking at definitely straight away feeling that absolute extreme competition towards that towards that girl. But definitely necessary, even though they are right now they don't have like that sort of truth chart in their position. And so like even though going to do right now are all that to like square one, it's like them having absolutely no value to start the job in their position. And even though it's in such a situation that like that girl like that new girl is like asking them they let her join the still I'm with them actually on with only even seeing the possibility like even beyond that like really still even though they have absolutely nothing in the, with no value talk with them and still like there are being some there in some sort of like a current intention uh current intention behind like that new bigger like wanting like join the team especially while they are in that the world of like a game like a career running game. So the lines like to be a bit of the strongly feeling they have certainly on them. So like definitely with like you are right now telling her that like that absolutely no straight away that she can't join like I'm still completely being gone and gone like innocent that would be resulting in like right now that would have created as or right now it's like it be gone that understanding would be convincing to you to that okay to let that newly got joined the famous like the scenario that I'm referring and that innocent of gone on usually in like the skin of that within that period and then that direct happen on gone and to expect the scenario that I'm referring and under the thing that way at that point it was more small quarrel even happening between like Tilwa and Vaughn. The Tilwa would only angry at Vaughn at that point on like that they were probably finding out about like that the movie girl that basically stuff at that point like betraying them and like giving away by after like killing all of their counts like within our family. So like right now like the person what would be resulting in like Vaughn like allowing according to my mother image would be allowing that to like join the thing will be morally one innocent that would be one for like the fake acting of that this may be only the fake acting of that girl movie girl player like but also on the like right now from going also asking her that basically as to like why she's playing like the career attitude and at that point I'm with the friend like her so be because of her possibly definitely having fundamental brain having that observe and stop and observe quantity loss of our like and like her telling because like the only condition for phone would be for like players to that play that in a game without any negativity in a non-negative manner for like players to that play the game to that grade and game to totally have fun and to that win that game through like the path of like having fun through the process. Which we definitely have don't have really in this sense that would be that's the only qualification and on like that born into feeling as a to like for like want to like allowing someone to like be part of the speed. So definitely my generation that definitely I'm going to bring that way want to like find out if like this new bigger as like the same kind of like intent and mindset like on right now and maybe asking her after like why she's like playing like the career running it and I was wondering how like connecting the coming plan or like straight away telling on that maybe that she loves like she has heard so much about the career running it and she loves being so much and she wants to have fun and it's like specifically mentioning that word fun with like all hearing that past song of it with the tone and feel it's like just an art that and the thing you mentioning is the word fun that you plays the game, she's like playing the game, to like okay how fun and have a great time within the game. That way like I'm doing that your movie player like I'm doing totally lying and fake acting in front of like song and Swargon and just selecting the totally spawning for it and I'm doing that song that telling her that like she's from this point on she's like part of that team along the line on straight away would be wearing at that point. And Kilo is only opposite that, and Kilo straight away telling on that like that's definitely not a good idea. But like I'm doing like one will be trying to convince like Kilo by repeatedly telling Kilo that like it's fine, that it's fine, like I thought stuff with the along the line one is telling Kilo, and like even though in a clear reference manner like Kilo still out of reference towards non like Kilo totally agree, but still Kilo definitely will be having that situation towards like that individual, and Kilo on the definitely will be totally keeping that close watch and will be always observing if like she finds it that if she tries attempts to like hold and of which that content and all that like with an article that but still able to find like the structure method and structure for like don't believe that to that way being wanted to start to up from that point on after like the girl joining like and their team is like the scenario that and to do that remaining that way for a while like the scenario that still able to be like the best of time like yes more and more time passes like I'm just like slowly even Killua as well falling into the trap of like that new teacher member by like them going to also of that as well to progress as a team prior thing with the like running in them going to also the thing of figures which like only to like learn the cost uh of like Killua like and like that well only that putting ourselves through that putting in effort into that saving and thinking born and Killua multiple times that we certainly Killua multiple times that person have that and so like that way as time passes and that like loyalty towards like the team that like she will be that will be showing like I'm that the stuff time or something in like eventually Killua as well got important for a part and like Killua as well slowly eventually believing that like she means no that along the lines of the like she has an okay intention and they really slowly like eventually after a while like Killua slowly starting to like trust that team member like the scenario that I'm looking and that way like eventually I'm looking like Killua as well starting like my hands will be feeling at ease and that will be having like guard down from that point on while in the of that girl member it's like the scenario that I'm looking and that way like I'm feeling like them what Killua and Gon they'll be feeling as that usually that they got a third plus point through that like scenario that I'm playing. And until that point, I'm also pretty like the only the last side of video of that, which is only also said about like one. But like I'm just like with like for chemistry between that one and that girl, I'm just like the years they travel together, like will be getting better and better to like the point where like one and one and that girl basically ending up becoming such great friends like the scenario that I'm playing. And that creating jealousy and a feeling of like frustration out of like the frustration of the Killua and all that. It's also like an good scenario that happens. Yeah, like but it still has like more and more time passing like into the Killua even sorting that out and basically eventually I'm looking even for Killua as well for the falling from the trap and like Killua always was fully ending up trusting something like on and like that way that them feeling us that they are and the like the try of they are like within like the real game that Gon and Killua and that point that for me feeling that basically exactly like Gon and Killua they have also found another friend through that word itself. Another friend through that word as well will be along the lines one and the feeling and it will be around that time that I'm like they will be finding that item which will be most likely that maybe it being around that time that actually will be finally finding according to my information will be finding that big sort of who will be that uh, to whom possession like eventually that sort of card will be eventually falling into the league methodology. So like that will finally bring the actions to like finding that big shot and like having that ultimate fight against that big shot and or falling and defeating that big shot. So that experience struggle and basically getting back the sort of card and like at that point like Gon and Killua and that girl will be totally celebrating that absolute Killua victory and like their whole victory of that basically getting back the lost sort of those card and like the whole advantage they will be having at that point of like being able to like exit anytime they want from the thing like the running game. So like I'm thinking it will be after that whole celebration that I'm looking like that girl will just be making a move and like that betrayal and will be like stealing all like stealing all the cards of Gon and Killua along with like that sort of rope card and like and the string of that betrayal like as she would be getting away from that Gon and Killua with like Gon and Killua maybe during like the while Gon and Killua just sleep and like that has just like some stealing all the items of Gon and Killua and like will be like steadily trying to like make their escape first and like even before like exiting like I'm getting more confident and her deciding to like sort out like all the store of items and everything before of getting a maybe uh, right before that is when I was like another big shot like player like totally uh, that targeting her at that point and basically like seeing all those items and like will be trying to like eliminate them to like steal all those items and doing that way I'm getting into trouble. And I'm looking like even before that I'm looking like Ron and Silva will be that Silva was like waking up and probably finding out that what's the item and moved on and that about like the betrayal of that girl. And that way like I'm going Silva probably blaming John for that and that Silva probably having that quarrel with like Ron and that was bringing that way that Ron feeling bad and then both like must really something for uh, searching for that girl to that point up before she fixing up the video again and that Bonnie will be desperately searching for like I'm letting them finding up. At that point, I'm looking scenario being that big shot, stealing all the items and that will be about to that eliminate the second scenario that happens. When again that last second I'm like gone probably save gone or like to the that was maybe even to that saving and like that fight between that the team of that John and Silva versus like that big shot has a like scenario where like on this like John and Silva was struggling the way like to get that big shot. And then that way like getting back all of the cards and like that the scenario and it's a card that was scenario that and at that point I'm listening Silva and extremely enraged Silva will be like telling that girl that like serves the fight for like her betrayal and all that will be along the line that should all be saying and at that point like John will be like feeling confused and split between like what to decide to like get up leave her and basically also get and almost like Silva within the running it or like the to like treat her badly injured state like injury thing along the line John will be in like a big kind of like a decision situations that leave her so like at that point John slowly walking towards her and asking her why she did it. Like, and at that point, she don't even more enraged at gone for like once again even following to like go up to her and talk to her like the scenario that I'm looking at. But like I'm looking at that point, that girl clearing up and basically conversation to that one I tell about her backstory, and I'm looking at that point like her actual backstory being related for like her suffering kind of like a situation in her life in like career work, and really about her like poor state as well as like well as her what her like mother who might not be who get only unwell and all that is particularly my brain. So like that way, like I'm doing that thing that I've been shocked for like on and Kilua. That point, like Kilua would be probably realizing as to like why she did that betrayal, but as to like why she did the things that she had done so far. As to her big and it was to get them the like the for that realization happening for on and Kilua. At that point, I'm looking that the Kilua probably forgiving her and when maybe telling sorry her and doing that way, like I'm looking at that only at that point that another difference being only at that point that that actually through friendship between like the team of that Bond and Silva and that were actually happening and becoming an actual thing only at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking at that way that them really deciding to like work as a team to like get to with like since by the number point like Silva role to like take down and get that big sort of blow of like everything like them telling her that basically as a team that they will be that competing with and finish one their goal maybe along the line they will bring that them deciding and basically that way like after that one maybe finding game and definitely I'm feeling like after maybe finding it like I'm definitely there being that fight between that one and game is like also like person that I'm looking for it. So that but even kind of like fight because like there will be that one specific card that will be the thing that like during that point like the beauty of like that actually need for like Ron and Bill and that like the scenario that so that league from will be right asking with like probably to if he could like do that card and I'm just like king talking at that point standing Bond super well if you want that card so like and then that way Bond defeating king with like throws great struggle Bond and within the like the scenario that way Bond I think that victory that Bond I think that completely will have the interaction and everything and then I'm looking like finally once that they will be running back and exiting out of the cricket game like at that point about like maybe one and Silva for going up to the home of like that girl in the career but after stuff in the career and that way that that girl being able to with all that money that she was making by that she will be from like the whole career game like after that her being around like the help of one being able to like save her mother. That's been like the scenario that I'm looking for and also also like the being of attention right now has got like this new leaders like intent I think the villains intent to like destroy like the friendship between like Gon and Silva permanently after the thing that eventually so they want that she will be joining like the team Gon and Silva and so their journey eventually after the thing that actually succeeding at that to a great extent to like the point of like basically the friendship between like Donna and are taking a huge step to certainly might have been very much for you to like person out that yet like I'm just like eventually up of your regretting doing that eventually like the very recent to them at a point once that another friend definitely from still something that like eventually or even wanting to like join like the team of Bond and Glow to definitely to like a little bit betray them and like because of only this like something potential like Bond and Glow being able to like collect a great number of like cards in that eventually that's like bank of and for to have them do all the work that way and to that way through by being with them that for her to like even more into the also the way that that's like within like the grade and game and then for her to like betray them and all that like scenario that I'm doing. So like but different like for like even though for like both are like that absolute breakage of like the bond of friendship eventually feels like happening to a great extent between like Ron and Leo. Number for instance, once like after that betrayal, that so that was number for instance would be like number for something definitely be like Ron and Leo that would be like even saving that world even after some of betrayal. It's like the scenario that I'm going to as like Julia was against eliminated by some picture. So like I'm looking that way, like from that point on, like that piece of picture regret within her, like I'm looking that would be also like I'm looking like that way through her conversation at that point as to like why she did all that and like she was also considering as to like her having consciously putting effort to like use effort to like try to contribute between one and one as to like why she did all of that like once she will be considering the talk about her backstory and her suffering like at that point I'm looking that way proof of itself like that as the breakage like the bond of friendship between that one and two which I'm definitely pretending will be definitely happening through this girl about the point like eventually still through the regret like I'm putting this girl itself like I'm like eventually and like fixing that breakage of bond within that non-active at that point in that within the user source of that make message in the day. Okay, so that doesn't make my very much right now as for land share for reading that the word of the tree island is not such a but like an actual location in like the real world. Like I'm bring definitely that would definitely be that church of the which is never eligible like that. That's so crap. Like I'm just bring that so she's my but for my different for like the NPCs being land out like I'm just so like it would be due to like the collective I'm considering like the creator of like the real island game like I think like it's a thing itself I think like I'm really that it's not from alone but actually one among the many players the real island game so collectively not created real island so like I'm definitely each one of them might have been specialist certainly my perception. Definitely I'm looking at definitely I think that will definitely be a specialist but not it won't be just being that I'm looking to the collection of that exactly corporate pro hunters who are all specialists. Since like it has already been revealed that for Africa's case that they need not to become face like a specialist like for Africa acquired like the conjure of then element of like the power for like Africa to like be able like the conjure for Africa to usually be able like raise specialists and like on the different definitely so all the creators of black metal creators who collectively join forces and put in that effort together to create like the real game might have all been specialists who will be having that control element of them using the which like collectively with by joining up like by combining like their collective net powers like ones of net powers like they might have created they might have been able to like, create all this that multiple great number of entities NPC net powers and materialness in the second basic and might be not just by using the like specialist concept of power alone, but like it will be through like the collective effort by combining like the concept and then powers of like specialist concept and then powers of that all the people behind like the creation of like the real like the preliminary to the so and definitely I'm looking like Hatsu, like the fact that like Hatsu is like the key that what shall be able to like Hatsu like and so two possible like I'm looking at the like the memory card would be like the memory card slot and that limitation runs to be really possible. One possible that I have to convert for like the memory card possibility in which can and like the memory card slot possibly have absolutely nothing to do with like how many individuals will be able to like enter into like the real game in like a single console. Where like I'm assuming maybe in actuality like it would be just like unleashing Hatsu alone that might allow that as many as people you might be able to like enter into like the real island game together. And all they might have to do would be just to like unleash their passive power. Might be like the case is like one possible that I'm doing. But if that's the case, then I'm doing like this like whole concept of like memory card slot and everything that is that required that requirement and limitation like all that might have been a bunch done by him to that way ensure that only quantity effectively from players entering into like the real game to make that game that much more interesting and difficult might be like rather than like just like people rushing in by just using like people lacking quality in like game skills and brilliance and all that like really just to avoid like all of them like totally rushing in and entering into like the real game just by using like the actual power from like the CD or like to avoid that and prevent that like for memory card like concept might have been revealed through that once like the grade and game is like putting to the public might have been what might have happened to the new mandatory and so like one possibility that I'm doing the other possibility that I'm looking for like since I think it has already been revealed that like the memory card contains flag and then infused into it what it thinks like so like maybe the other possibility that basically the memory card will be actually saying that since like maybe like there might be or I think that there are like infused into like the memory card so like each time the memory card is inserted into a slot at that point only the single person might be able to like use that hardship. Only a single acceptance of like hardship swap and activation of like the hardship swap will be happening. Just one second single then into your like memory card will be inserted. So like that way there actually might be such a limited that's right. When I limitation might take just like the other body that I'm looking at. Definitely my book orientation is more like definitely through since like on to like shells like theory like since it shall use that like a hard to trap I'm going to bring like transporting like the person into like the location to like the island of Kirid Island in the real world like I'm going to bring so definitely my good ambitions for like for each and every single players to exist within like the Kirid Island game like the requirement might be for each and every single player and that's by using like the access by getting activated for the hassle trap getting transported into like the Kirid Island game location like the real world, like for them to like be able to like stay there, stay in that island, like the requirement might be that for men to like flow within them, like for heart to be to flow within them, to each person within them might be that requirement for them to be able to like stay there within like the world of video island to settle in with action because like this might be the reason for like one like a player gets eliminated within like the world of like the video island, like that player that has to trap getting like revoked or cancelled and straight away like that player that has to trap get undone and basically because like once the player gets eliminated things like all the nine powers within like the body gets would be like leaving the body so like that requirement will be failing at that point so like that way like when the has to trap might be getting undone of that player and that way like might be how to like the thoughts of that player ending up returning back from like the great island game to like the what might be appearing as if like the real world training actually could be like the transformation of that will be like the absence of like men in the top like the transportation like the instant transportation happening for like a teleportation kind of a scenario happening with like the Hadufra coming and like that player's body with like tops that goes like players get tops like running back to like the location from which it had activated the Hadufra and like teleported into like the real island location, island location like the real world in like the beginning. This like might be like a definitely member to image. So like this is like a real justice that like a shall right now according to this like believe and it's like theory right now this like thing might be definitely the possibility of like them being able to like exit like the real island game whenever they want. Like such a possibility existing without like what that being said according to like the rules of Imperial Alien that like specific certain item, single item has to be obtained for like to be able to like exit from the Imperial Alien. And that item like that item which allows the player to like exit from the Imperial Alien to see having that limitation of only three such items might only exist within like the island of the Imperial Alien. Secondly, going to mention that item could be like net might be like created like and also created like the Imperial Alien world like something like they might have infused like net conditions onto those specific three items, which would be having like the power that basically once like uh, player like within like the world of real and like sees that item and that basically activates that item at that point for like that also transportation like which that might not only brought that player transport that player into like the real game that also effect become undone and that way would be how like the exiting from like the real island could be possible through the activation of like the net infused into that item and that way getting like the player out of like the real world real island back to like the real world location where from which like has to initially have got activated. These are the important into like the real world of the reality. Might be the case of like the other possibility variables. So like the temperatures for like according to like what is possibility and like theory that like self right now feeling like I'm thinking what will be coming to self mind right now as for like the real question would be like the possibility of like if what if like shall cancel out like the entire thing of like the numbers in this like body so it's like with basically to make like cells like body be in like the same kind of situation as that of like an eliminated player within like a running game who will be at that point having absolutely no net going through like the body at all. So like I'm maybe shell right now. This might be like that real question that like yeah, right I'm curious about of like the because like any player being able to like exit from like the running game anytime that player wants if that player has like the power to completely cancel out that kind of effect and flowing through like the heart and then that effect and flowing through like the body of that player. Like basically using that player's with temporary. If that player can do that, like the possibility of like that player being able to like instantly be able to like exit out of like the career and again. This will be what like Shan is right now, which can be cured about skepticism I will say. So like I'm skeptifying that actually is like a possibility that I'm definitely hoping that like if like a player is actually able to do that and will be cancel out like the presence of like net using to build temporarily to say like cancel out like the entire the process of in and flow through that person's body. Then I was like maybe that and if that also has like absolutely no consequence of like affecting that person's health or like anything affecting that person in any way. Then I was like maybe if that's possible, then I was like that thing like the feel to like for any player to be able to like exit out of like the running it at any time they want. It's like one possibility that I'm doing, or like the other possibility that I'm doing for like that's like the least likely probability that I'm doing for like what shall we do this about right now. Would be that like since like shall right now think that like the running game might only be like allocation in like the real world. Then shall is the only thing that like it's like an island like in like the real world. Then definitely the body of water like sinks around like that island. So that basically so like what if like when after like collecting like the items they need like even if they didn't get they are not able to like find that exact specific item using which that I don't they will get like out with the real allegations. That's the way the whole says that's still what it said right I don't really different method of that going finding like the boundary location of like the real island version that is that and since shall we only believe that it's like an island thing that the real world so like to go up to its like boundary to its like shorelines and basically to build a boat and basically for them to like sail out of like the real island a green island real world green island and basically that way with all the different items and that way for them to be like sale after like storing like food as well as then next with is like food and what I know that right and then for them after collecting all the items like to totally sail out of like the green island world and real world real island and that way that they might the positive them being able to like make it back to like the mainland that way and basically that that way being able to like find an escape out of like the real island game through such a manner as well Great Island real world as well through such a manner of the along the lines that Shal might be right now thinking of and might be curious of us for like the topic itself. Definitely might consider it. Also the feeling of attention right now is for like one player that playing like the real island games, the fact that like the console can't be like destroyed and even if like plugged out, the plug is like taken off like the console like still like the console can't be stopped at all. And those even that men supporting that and covering and flowing through that console that protects that console from all sorts of such impact and any danger like action keep that console protected. Uh, and we ensure that trap state of like that player who has entered that particular game at that point. Number three, that as well emphasizing like that control being indestructible once like a player is like playing with the real game and that control might be totally due to that as well might be totally due to that then infused into the CD of like the real game. It's like a scenario that I would select. Then it will give this one to like that CD. Emphasizing that would be like there will be multiple conditions infused into like the theory. One of them being like that theory as well as like the memory card maybe like and one of them would be definitely according to that shell that might definitely be like that hard so crack filling like the player and putting the player into like the theory and location in like the real world. But like there will be that other uh, a subset of a subset area of immense manpower induced onto the remaining portion of the city, and that will be the collective manpower of all these top or hunters specialist hunters all of their powers manpower they would have all induced onto these are the series of and that their collective powers will be what manpower will be what will be enveloping and the main condition would be once the series once the series plays and once the player memory card is inserted and once the player lets out that player passing and that will is transferred into the line location. At that point, the condition of the second condition of the series gets activated where the collective combined net powers of all the creators of the grid and including including into the phone that can power instantly enveloping that send out the sector console. So it will be solely due to that to the positive is being the combined net powers of all those raw hunters who have created game during including that combined manner and the collective immensely powerful net powers and will be what's enveloping the grid and control, and this might be the reason for absolutely no one being able to destroy the console even to the present after a player enters into secondary running it. Might be also the case in my area. Okay, so but you know, mentioned right now is that is the shall right now will be totally underestimating the brilliance of the creator of secondary running game. Might be the case even because actually the creators when creating the period island world that's the real world. Especially about that part challenge is okay, right? And the period island game and the might be allocated an island in the real world. But and what shall we get okay underestimating the possibility of the creators of the period island world that basically considering the worst case scenario in this players figuring out that that it's not a real world, but it's an actual located in the real world, an actual island in the real world, exactly like how Shell has right now. Put out only figured out I'm doing there might have been players in the past as well who might have figured out and might have tried to escape, might have used a boat or might have even created a boat and tried to sail out of the Great Island game. Great Island board and might have ended up getting eliminated in multiple times in the map. Might be a few months. So I'm it might have been so the game creators might have been considered such a worst case scenario where the players finds out that group that it's not a game but it's a real world attempt to escape and even that a trap a seriously powerful trap with the combined powers the trap containing the combined powers of all the creators from specialist levels bunch of powers and using that high level traps might have set all across the sea perimeters surrounding the real island. It's definitely my take on so that might be the case. So I'm saying that the definitely for the scenario to be shall around contact and Sudoku. And I'm looking at them easily make up of space and things as well. So them all I'm looking at collectively obtaining a lot of getting themselves a lot of cards and everything and I'm looking definitely that they will be totally Charlie will totally be excited about that whole upgrade the random would be as a great in the power and strength will be gaining the moment they really bring back all this spell cards into the real world and we get music would be along the lines Shall would be totally excited about and Shall will be at that point totally for considering that they have totally outsmarted even the creators of the huge deal of the period and game will be along the lines Shall will be at that point with the only one contemplating it. So I'm just on the shell, but once channel to getting the information of the thing as well as rate and especially some things with that or confident nature of things and things probably only being extremely overjoyed and will be excited and will be okay will be TSK and Sarvi community and making fun of and mocking the creators of the creator and games while interacting with other members and I'm the in the scenario where I have collecting all these items I'm doing cards and all these items I'm doing then building most likely building a boat I'm certainly putting most likely for scenario being in the show and the of when the perimeter of the real running game I'm just putting there won't be there will be not even a single boat definitely because of the king when being part of the creator of the running game that me I'm just putting while setting up such a trap, like game might have ensured to like not have any post be placed on like anywhere on the shoreline and for no cost at all to like on the shoreline. Game might have made sure of certainly my comprehension. So definitely in that way that things as well as that those kind of problems that self the global kind of for that self and like patent as well as that physical of it as well as that all of them like together like them for the building a boat eventually after like collecting all the items that they feel that they need that lead to bring to the real world once they will be back to that the main location the next real world will be they will be doing so like I'm once they will be getting all the items they need like I'm giving them building a boat and once they will be done building a boat I'm going to bring them setting sail. So like I'm doing as they will be setting sail itself like without much great delay like I'm bring them reaching at a point in like the sea to where like I'm doing there will be a barrier like thing that will they will be next me finding that surroundings the surround surrounding them in like the sea and like I would be that extending towards like on either ends will be that barrier will be extending far towards the, as far of their eye will see on both ends like the scenario development. So like at that point I'm going to like kind of like feeling suspicious of like and that barrier right there on that barrier I'm just like a board saying like a warning board of like do not cross the barrier. It be also sort of unknown like the scenario development. So like at that point I'm going to like shall so me feeling a bit of suspicious about like that barrier. But like I'm doing like that things would be of course extremely feeling all confident and really excited about like laying it back to like the input and to like coding use all the powers of like all this start create and start and everything. So like I'm doing like that overconfidence of things resulting in that things straight away in that attacking using manpower like attacking and trying to like destroying that barrier and everything the moment that attack of things will be making contact with that barrier and then bring the trap the barrier will be more likely a trap like a barrier that barrier and the different to extent will be encircling like the entirety of like the immediate sea road area encircling like the real world real and make it so like at that point the like things attack like the moment it will be landing on the barrier like at that portion of like that portion of like, the barrier like the trap getting activated and like the intensity of like that trap attack that will be happening through that on the spring of second explosion happening at that point once the trap will be getting activated, resulting in like all of them getting eliminated like things patent like shard, even shell and one of the as well as like into all of them at that very instant itself will be getting eliminated like the scenario that I'm using. That way like I'm looking like definitely this like current plan of this like shall happen in my elaboration to steal all the cards and basically to actually be able to like make it that to that the back to like the main like actual main like activity that strategy while executing it will be when comparing like these five members of like the financial members of the community instantly that or that trap that will be instantly getting eliminated of like the evil scenario that I'm looking and my career. And so according to my remember such a surrounding area of like construction like existing in like the surrounding civil area around like the real world area location just like the scenario that I'm just like the signboard saying like do not cross. And but still my members of that like the intent behind such a dialogue will be slowly taken to that like none of like the player playing the career and game break the rule of like it's able to like break the rule of like the career and game and is able to like escape out of like the career and game without seizing that specific item. The kind of single item alone which allows like the best way to career and game. So only ensure that rule is like followed the sole reason for like such a trap that it fixes things according to my opinion. It's definitely very because like in actuality like my opinion ambitions also that like it could be in like the surrounding areas of that trap area surrounding that real world area. It will be from in that area alone that I'm looking like the spell cards will be even having their powers, you will be even working or even having their powers, it's definitely like because like but to bring that all the creators of like the Green Island game will be within like the Green Island game itself. So to like make my career. So it will be like their constant like immense powers like they will be like always flowing out of them and basically uh, and like enveloping like the entirety of like that barrier area surrounding that uh, everything inside that surrounding barrier area uh, that surrounding that the real world reality here will be that the only area of that portion of area like the limited area in which like the spell cards will even working supplements. So like right now, but like even about which like chance might be having a to could be totally having absolutely no idea at all. Might be the case with supplements. So like I'm just like even though according to like the rules of the career running game, once like a player like the career running game, the player can take three designated chance with the player back to like the real world to the mainland. Like on the first still like that as well would be totally a mocking and like a or like a mocking at like the player who will be like clearing like the career running game because like definitely because of like being one of like, the creators of the career running game like and like that they totally a fault of being given to the player who has which is clear like career running game. So definitely my favorite uh, because like regard it could be only that the precious and valuable item within like the Green Island game alone that in like the free pockets alone that the player can bring that to like the actual mainland real world and sell and like for like high price and make a lot of money. So it's definitely might be the case definitely when it has for like the spell card that like only used to like attack the spell cards that have like magical powers of like attacking and all that like that under the point like once that the player leaves like the perimeter of like the barrier area surrounding that real world island of the real island. At that point, from that point on, beyond that barrier area, like I'm doing that the spell card would be just instantly turned into that normal card with like having a spell powers, which might be the case. I mean, if spell powers will be only possible within that perimeter barrier area, in that area within like that barrier area of like the surrounding like the real world area and might be the case in the different. So like that offer of like taking three designated cards with some back to like the real world on clearing like the green island game as per like the game rules as well should be in such a way that like it will be only the card alone that will be able to like brought back to like the real world. You know, at all like the powers contained, cell powers contained within the card might definitely be the case definitely making sure everything because the game being like one of like the creators of like the green island world like and the last thing might want definitely there will be it would be down to certain like the last thing will want or like the creators of like the Great Idea, with like the last thing any one of them will want to see for like players to like take advantage of like the card in that instance like the Great Idea. And basically to be able to like use that spell card onto that powers of the spell card onto that main landing that will be what like create for the player and maybe even at the possible takeoff of that the real world and all that like to get like my machine for like things as well as like the like remaining creators of like video running game having to like put into effort at all to like ensure that like such advantage is not taken solely due to like the effects of like the spell cards power like only being possible within that perimeter of area surrounding like the railway career and might be the case especially like in the range so that's it. Yeah, so like also the playing of the range right now the like in according to like share according to like the game rules like on player like the game that pre-designated cards can be back to like the real world like I'm talking the fully those three designated cards and the different might be like the case where like a players like the game could like pick from any of like the total designated cards within like the real writing game to bring back to like the real world so that but like even though that the surprise that will be awaiting those players will be once they will make it back to like the real world like none of the cards like even by then having the cards in their possession none of those cards will be having their powers self out at that point might be the case definitely I would understand that something over and I'm also felt that so with this reason I'm also felt that object that allows the player to like actually that single object that allows the player to like exit from the career running game might definitely be uh, a free pocket item. It's definitely not the same. So like it would definitely be a free pocket item. It's definitely not information. While like so that like among like the three designated tasks like on clearing the games that player can choose like the player doesn't get like one of like the spot for like among like the three designated tasks getting with the exit card. Definitely be the case. Definitely might be very much. What sort of limits friends right now as for like successful when saying right now that as for like warfare after that maybe being there within the running game itself. So like I think what they will be after will be like some sort of like specific item within like the running game. Which will be only having like the power to like undo like the net conditions or their lead up or might be the case that you might be the So like what might have happened would be like something like lot of us like kind of on top of like that like back then like I'm the like I'm like so that I left like I'm the like After that, like I'm thinking that remaining friends might have made it to find Explorer. Might have been definitely happened. Because like definitely Black Explorer might have during that point might have had like piece of black most likely tiny stone in his black pocket, which like the clone of that stone might be with black on top it might have been with black on top it like that way that way using like on top it black under powers that they might have managed to like trace Chloro all the way back to find a Chloro on that top of like that might have been what might happen certainly memory so that way I'm different like without so like I'm different like without interacting with like Chloro like they might have still managed to like help Chloro get down from like that like even though Chloro doesn't have any of that since like Chloro doesn't have any of that also like I'm sort of as per like that premonition like I'm looking like that is the position I'm looking like Chloro might have straight away uh, walk in that exact like that people had told Chloro to like go from that point on so that production point had told earlier in the past had told Flora to go. So like I'm just there like Flora might have made it to a town at that point, and in that town like Flora might have seen like a comrade exactly like in like that production point that he might have seen a comrade, and it might have been someone whom like Flora might have known in his life, but like in that distant past and might have never seen it exactly. So like Flora might have seen that familiar face in that town that person. It might be that Flora might have only interacted to that person, while that the remaining kind of improvement might have kept distance. And like I'm looking like that way, up like Flora, uh, uh, and that way like I'm looking like after that Flora might have stayed in that town. So like I'm looking like that remaining kind of improvement might have talked to that person and basically might have found out about it might be proving that the remaining kind of improvement might have found out that while they might have asked about that interaction between that cloud and that coming that he might have been told of those remaining kind of members that shall might have been noticed. So like he might have told them about like basically the Greed Island game and basically about that they are being just like specific item within like the Greed Island game, which if they are able to like acquire it, like they will be using that item which has like the item that has like inferior powers that can undo in conditions will be along the line that that person might have thought that just the kind of performance might have been what might have happened certainly when it is. So like that way, from that point on, I'm looking for like this desire to like enter into like the real game might have happened shipping like to that kind of movement of certainly my contribution that was might have happened from that point on certainly very friendly. So those might have been like the main reason for like along with like the intent to like to acquire like all the like rare and valuable items that would be like room up to 40% of like the rare game that still this might be their top priority as for that exact item that they just have to get in order for them to like save their live flow and to have like a lot of heals like get back multiple set of net balls back and then boost the net condition and all that. So that definitely this would be like that top priority item that in actuality that they would already have. This definitely my person very within like period again, definitely my person. So it's like a scheme of prevention right now that is using Slack talking about the item has to be able to like transform to a cell rather than just like create like materialize items and create clones of items like and different W just like a typical power like for topic which is like exact like for topic for Africa as well just like a conjure in the spring that being in that person around the spring for Africa as well reaching that level and being able to like do like the very same kind of like transformation powers using like the conjure power like for Africa achieving that power in like okay build up and that way for Africa being able to using a conjure power being able to like transform herself as well into animals as well. So also like about that animals of like for Africa being able to transform herself into like making her look like bronze or silver and that way like I'm looking like to uh, such a manner as well for Africa being able to that as well ending up being the Christian field of being like an essential and useful like useful project in like Africa's like arsenal like the with the scenario that I'm looking for. So like that way I'm looking for African education with the main once again like one like Chloro usually getting back this that power and like the net condition we get and that which definitely right I'm think you know certainly happening like there's something about. So that way, like I'm looking like at that distinct the ones that I'm considering at that point for Africa once again getting into trouble. So like at that point, definitely for Africa use for things like using such strategies of like control abilities of like transforming themselves into changing appear themselves. So like in the box that was about the topic and channel since like one of it has like transformed into a cat and with like the higher sense of smell of like the cat. Like I'm thinking without the creative at all, like I'm thinking that and the group of like share photography as well as like physical will be making it towards like enjoying it and joining with like the team of like things and data as like the scenario that I'm looking at the bring. And also the thing I'm with like Ron and Silva as well. Like right now heading over to like the Michael City of like Mazador. Actually I'm feeling like they are like I'm feeling like a government created as well like Ron and Silva as well. Along with that girl who wants to join the team like who is still following them and who can keep it up at that point like will be totally running into like the group of like kind of different like Shal and also things like the scenario that happening. And at that point I'm referring Shal when all of the others like even more than the like Shal and then extreme that's towards feeling of that's towards like Ron and Silva due to like them finally well now aware that like them going to connected to like the changes of two and the releasing data to login and definitely isn't like definitely they might have had that existed that personal bond of like integrate of between like self and the login like I'm different like definitely self would be like struggling to like contain like raise to a certain extent on seeing that gone and give that was like was an out of that definitely I'm doing that girl who badly want to join gone and give up at that point without knowing at all that who they are like or like she might have not even heard of like the group of like so like without knowing who's like I'm doing stuff that totally mocking like the fans or members at that point is like the scenario that I'm doing without having absolutely no idea at all as like how they are. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. So and I'm like that I'm looking like one totally liking that as like that right that girl would be like girl maybe would be like okay modeling stuff and for but I'm looking that as well was totally probably liking that and like I'm that as well like okay creating that whole situation for like one to like decide to like catch up like that girl maybe to that thing as well as also like an angel for the scenario right I'm looking for the prediction of the right one sort of the redemption right now for like the call for like to Zola right now. And the bring will be most likely from Piloni, especially on the mention. And that the reason I don't need the body so I would be most likely to do that. Piloni but with badly who had even shown up for like way of no option badly wanting like a copy of basically running in and badly wanting to like play it basically running it like a friend. Since we couldn't like like he might have totally since he knows of like that for like he might have told the help that Ilumi and might have told Ilumi about like some specific because like he might have like Ilumi's brother might have gone through like all sorts of details yeah, might have sub like sub and like might have found out all sorts of like proven details connecting to like the running game and all the rare and valuable items that would be said to be percentage like the running game and all that like information about that like which might be present in like the that like I'm looking at probably like I'm looking at the brother of like you might have like learned of it and might have only you decided to like you might have only said that like those items will be something that you and about like those items being able to like be brought back to like the real world if like the person finds like like the person like able to find the exit item and like exit from the future and get all this information I can use that Kilos brother like might have searched up that and might have gained the knowledge of and might have used that knowledge to like to trying to like get Illuminate to like so to get like the rewriting game for him to working so that like he might have told like without realizing at all like the dangers of like the running game like something like that. Young's brother might have told me that for us we don't need to like told told me about this like rare and precious item being present within the running game. So like at that point like that item might have got Lumis understand that Lumis brother might have told Lumis that basically that to for Lumis to like go up to like better place and basically to steal one of like, the series of like the running game from there and bring it back to that and so that like they could work with that and for like you need to like bring that one series and like two a console and like a series and two memory cards that you could steal that from that is that or so that like them both would be able to like play electricity running game together would be able to like kilo product might also film so that point you don't straight away not like all that fast, but like I'm the like might have only fell on that mention of like that item, a specific precious item like and that coupled with like more multiple like rare items present within like the running game is like the other might have 4 kilo at that point. So like straight away you might have decided to like how they to obtain and face all that items from like the running game. would be a long time Illumi might have felt. So like straight away that Illumi might have felt of that basically getting Hisoka's help as well as he would be entering into the critical game. Definitely Illumi as well might have maybe just roughly looked into that about like the critical game and might have realized that it's like the only game and all that. So like I'm just like Illumi might have decided to like not to invite himself but to like take Hisoka's with him. So this might be the reason for like Illumi right now calling Hisoka. So like I'm during that Hisoka picking up the phone and I'm like Illumi telling Hisoka that basically about like the great alien and about and I was again Illumi at that point will be telling Hisoka how that basically there are all these like rare and valuable items within like the great alien game that they could only split basically eventually totally could split between themselves like the share of the items that they would be got to would be easily able to like take from the great and when we get on the line Illumi trying to convince Hisoka to that play the great alien game together with him but like I'm like so that's straight away disagree so like I'm rejecting the offer. So like I'm assuming at that point, Illumi most likely telling Hisoka that like about like the positive like God and Tigua maybe being present, maybe being playing like essentially running it. Would be also like possible that I'm putting maybe like I'm even that maybe Illumi is like rather and might so like I'm considering like maybe like it was like sort of might have on the web might have found footages of like the three island game selection example like Petra on the web might have been the case. So like I'm thinking that way he might have actually found out that phone and Kidwa in those two titles. Definitely might be ranking, participating in that selection exam. So like I'm looking that that way like he might have told might have just like he was might have mentioned about like Kidwa having entered into like the grade and the selection exam and like might have shown that footage to like the photo like about that and so like that way like he don't need to be using that as like the way to like get Kidwa to it's all back to like only play the great driving game with Illumi. And so like that way, Illumi at that point might that phone call and the conduct telling Hisoka that way to once like Hisoka would be like rejecting like the offer like at that point like the point strategy that Illumi would be using would be Illumi at that point telling Hisoka that like Killua and Kwon has basically specifically Kwon has basically like playing like the great driving game right now will be along the next one to be like Illumi uh, telling Hisoka at that point. And that will be what gets like Hisoka's attention. So like at that point, like Hisoka totally feeling that he will not want to like once again enter into like the great anime game and he's gone another level and like basically along the lines like Hisoka totally finally decides and that way like Hisoka agreed to like play like the great anime game together with like me. And like that way like sounds like basically that the team of like Hisoka and Izumi easily stealing like one of like the control from that of place and that was like just straight away entering into that real-time game together. Udemy and Soka entering into the real-time game together, like scenario that I'm going to